next question was, is there any difference, did you feel that there was any difference between voting for the US government and the tribal council, elections? Do you feel that there is a difference in your mind when the elections for the tribal council, is it different? How do you feel?
You want to elaborate on that?
I would probably spend 6 or 7 hours on I remember watching the news with my grandpa, and I think it was over a Wounded Knee, and he was telling me he was kind of not happy with it, and he says real Indians don't act that way, and he said that we weren't like that, and yes, he was a boarding school survivor and was probably taught something to be less conspicuous. He was a World War II veteran, and as we watch the news, and it's probably been 50 years or so, 48 years ago, he says that they're not satisfied with the tribal government. And then I remember distinctly him chuckling, and he said that tribal government isn't our government. And he went on to say that that they were Ogama, and he would explain that something made them, that they weren't really these head people, that something made them. And because I was 12 or 13 years old, I maybe didn't fully understand what he was talking about. Now, myself, growing up, I'm a veteran, and I once swore an oath to the United States Constitution that I believe still does not apply to us. But that's my personal opinion. When I look at the Indian Reorganization Act, it's an act of Congress. It created these entities that, quite frankly, their own documents call a body politic of the United States government, and they're following through with the mandates of the BIA, federal law, and other things. So, growing up, I did not partake in the so-called tribal elections because I had a different understanding of what a colonial tool is when it is designed to abrogate the roads of treaty rights. And because the people I grew up around who invested a tremendous amount of giving me this understanding of what it means to be an indigenous person, I just had a different concept of tribal government. And these ladies are exactly right about a heads person isn't motivated by the money they receive. The real leaders, head persons, they're doing something because it should be done, and there's not that compensation that what they're looking for. The whole term will get you the, nowadays we think it means a warrior, and from what I understand, after World War I, when quite frankly our ceremonies were still outlawed. That was 1978 with the American Indian Religious Freedom Act that so-called, gave us the right to practice things. So when they were having these ceremonies for these returning World War I veterans, someone watching the doings must have asked someone of importance what the ceremony was, and supposedly there was some discussion about, well, we're holding this person in high esteem for doing something really, really extraordinary, and we're honoring that Ogichida. So because they were World War I veterans partaking in that, it was perceived that they were warriors. And people don't have to believe my understanding and believe what they want. But an Ogichida could be that amazing leader out there in the brush getting the medicine, and doesn't necessarily belong to one gender or not. They were matriarchs and patriarchs of the people that followed them. I'm not saying anything against Ogichida meaning today, but there's a deeper meaning of what that actually should mean for those men and women that have did some extraordinary things in their communities and raising their families and making sure that the next generation got here. Tribal government, to me, even though I partake in it, it's still a foreign colonial system that, if we're not careful, is slowly eroding and abrogating what those people in the not so distant past saved for us. So if there's a way that voting can empower people to be valued and their thoughts validated, then we should be organizing in that traditional method of community power voting. I'm trying to stay on point.
No, I love it. I love it. That was really heavy, actually. I think so too. It's more what you're saying to the point of Hearthguard, Ogichida. If you want to talk in a colonial mindset, where in a colonial sense, or colonized sense, when people speak of Hearthguards, which would be, the women who take care of the, hearth and home and would, fight off any encroaching, enemies, but also do the teachings and stuff. So, not to throw a gender on there, but, what you're saying is people who are more a servant of the people, a leader of the people. Is that correct?
Actually, I got a story about that. I've done some research on the treaty negotiations. And the treaty negotiations are really a clash of two cultures. In one of the earlier treaties, the federal government had marched into a village, and they stood around and supposedly asked someone tending a fire, who's in charge? And the firekeeper supposedly looked over at this elder lady working on something a few feet away and said, she's in charge. And because of the clash of the two cultures, this foreign culture being one male-driven and where their women didn't own property, didn't make decisions, it was just this male privilege, white male privilege thing. They looked at that old lady over there, and she may have been sitting by another fire, and she was the one they were all pointing to as the one in charge. So the U.S. government official supposedly strode over there like this and stood before this elderly lady and said, "Who's your man?" Because they weren't, accustomed to dealing to the true leader of that family, that community or village. So they needed a proxy male. In our culture, a lot of the men are the speakers or whatever, but it's those Ogichidakwe that are the ones that say, you're going to get up and tell the people that the lunch is going to start at 11, and that people should bring their dishes, and so then that guy stands up and yeah, we're going to start at 11. Bring your dishes. Is that right? I've said. So, sorry,
No, I love it.